I'm so excited to chat with Kristi Sullivan today on the Awaken Feminine podcast. Kristi is a human design and self-care expert, an author and a speaker who's on a mission to help busy women stop overworking and start overflowing. Oh my goodness, start overflowing. We don't want to stop overflowing. And I'm so excited to have her because I know we're going to have a really great conversation. And she has so much love and wisdom to share with us today. She's joining me all the way from New England in the USA. Welcome to the show, Kristi. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here, and I'm so glad that you invited me.
Yeah. Kristi, I'm so excited because I love human design, and I know we're going to be talking about human design. So yay. But before we do dive into our conversation, I'd love to know, what is your definition of an awakened feminine?
What a good question to start off with. I feel like right now we are shifting into this time of this awakened feminine. And I don't think it applies just to women. So I think it's really about us finding this balance in our energy. I think we've been through such many hundreds of years of more masculine, creation of like innovation and technology, and the wheel and, transportation, and things that we really need to help us evolve. But this now feminine is more of the turning, I think, back inward, this softer side, the empathy, the intuitiveness that balances out some of that other energy. So I think that we're all shifting into that, and awakening to it can be such a beautiful journey. And I think once we do awaken fully, that we've got this more of a balanced state in ourselves as well as the world around us.
Yeah. Wow. What a beautiful definition. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, it's this, awakening the feminine. And when we bring that balance, then the masculine energy can come out and innovate in a more holistic way, where it's things that, both the feminine and the masculine want. So it's just a beautiful way to share your definition. Thank you so much for that. Now, yes. Kristi, let's dive into your story, your journey. You're a human designs expert and self-care expert. Can you share with us, what led you down this path to become the expert in human designs and self-care? Like, what was a drive and what was a passion that, made you decide this is what I'm going to do? Yeah.
Well, I think a few things I've learned along my journey. One is I love to learn things and be the student, but I also like to teach what I've learned. So that's something that's come up over and over for me during my career and such. And about 20 years ago, I discovered yoga. And I start there because that was really my entry to the mind, body, spirit sort of world. And I was so excited about learning the background and history of yoga and what it did for the holistic, well-being, that I just wanted to share it with everybody. And I did become a yoga teacher and started to teach yoga in addition to a marketing career that I had. And about 6 years ago, when I discovered human design, sort of the same thing happened. I had this excitement about, wow, this is so neat. And I started to learn about it for myself. And then I would give my friends and family members, I pull their charts and look at what kind of type that they were and their energy blueprint. And so I just got excited and realized that this is just an amazing tool, and that not many people know about it, or if you do, then you do. But if you don't, then it's definitely a new tool, one that's getting out there more. And so I really enjoy that idea of being able to teach it and share it with others.
So I love human design, and I discovered it probably a year and a half ago. And I I'll give you a little funny story. Well, not funny, but it was a story where I was meant to find human design because I had no idea what human design was.
And I usually say that it finds you when you're ready.
Yeah. So I was talking to my girlfriend, and she's in LA. We're talking and she's like, "Are you a generator?" I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And then she's like, "Look up human design, da, 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 da." And at that time I was in a course and I was in the Facebook group, and lo and behold, this girl posts up, "I'm offering free human design readings." I'm like, I had literally just got off the phone with my girlfriend in LA, and this is what I found on Facebook. So obviously I signed up and I went on I had a reading and I went, "Whoa, do you know me?" Because this is just absolutely crazy. It's like, you know me and I don't know you at all. So that's my introduction into human design, and I've loved it ever since. I'm no way an expert, so I know bits and pieces and I kind of go in. So I'm just so excited to have this conversation with you. Can I ask you why you love human design so much to the point where you are teaching it and offering readings?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I do want to say that I still am the student too. I mean, human design is so complex, or so many layers to it, that it is a lifelong study and experiment. It's not like you learn it once and you're really the expert. I think it comes through just teaching and talking about it and experimenting. So what I have found was that when I used it for myself, and I'll say in 2020, we had a lot of change, but in my world, I actually stepped away from my marketing career. And I kind of had this like blank slate of like, okay, what am I going to do next? And what I ended up doing was following what's called the human design strategy that I have as a generator also. And just noticing what were the opportunities that started to come up for me and following those. So I started to live this like beautiful flow of like, well, I'll try this and then maybe I'll do this. And one thing started to lead to another. I got asked to speak about human design, and the group of women I spoke to didn't know much about it and they wanted to do readings afterwards. So I started to just evolve this business by being in my design itself. And then when I saw what it did for others and this affirming of who they are, like you said, people will say to me, not only like, "How do you know this?" but they'll say, "Do you have a camera like behind me or something? How do you know that these are part of my, aspects of my life?" And really, it's a fascinating tool because I've studied things like personality assessments or communication styles, and I love those. I love when those reveal things, and those include your personality aspects that you learned or grew up with. So, for example, conditioning you had or any life experiences. Human design is actually like what's underneath all of that and what you were encoded with in terms of your energy and your blueprint. And I thought it was really fascinating because, again, I did know yoga and I understood the chakra system, and human design has some elements of that. So I just got excited about like, wow, this is so much deeper. This helps you really know who you are and who you're not, and really started to honor who I was. I was more accepting and validating of my own energy, and then realized other people are just built differently and we're all unique.
I love that. That's so cool. Kristi, do you mind talking a bit about how people can find their human design?
Yeah. And let me say, for anyone who doesn't exactly know what it is your energetic blueprint based on your birth date. And you can find a lot of information online. You can find a couple of websites where you input your birth date and out pops a chart. It looks like the shape of a body with different shapes that represent energy centers. Like I said, the chakras, and it blends together some ancient wisdom from the chakra system, I Ching, Kabbalah, and even astrology. And astrology really is a key part of it because on your birth date, there was a certain alignment of planets and cosmic energy It takes into account that, as well as the date 3 months prior to your birth date. So again, if you just find a website, you input your birth date, everything kind of happens behind the scenes, and then out pops this chart. And then it looks kind of complex, like, well, what does this all mean? And so the best thing I would say, the next step, once you find that maybe online, is I would always recommend talking to somebody who understands human design, can help explain what this blueprint is. And then you get to learn about different aspects of your energy, different ways that you're meant to operate. And it also takes into account like how we were conditioned and maybe ways that we were taught to be different, which really don't serve us. So if we imagine like we're really are unique, but we're all trying to fit in the same formula, the same box, it just doesn't really help us to be that authentic, true, unique being that we are.
Yeah, I love that. I want to ask you, because with the human design, I know you have to know the time of your birth as well. So for people that don't really know the exact time of their birth, how would that affect their, the chart that pops out?
Yeah, good question. There's a lot of layers to human design. And so you can, if you know around the time, like if it was morning versus evening, then that's okay. But just like when we experience a full moon, the full moon is like the fullest at a certain point in the day. And then it starts to shift. So if we don't know our time, then there may be some deeper layers in your chart that may shift. If you were, say, 11 p.m. versus 11 a.m. So it's good to try to find that time, or ask somebody if they remember the time of day. You can always call like the hospital or town records to find out if there was an actual time in the record. It's usually on your birth certificate. If not, you can again call. And then you could also work with somebody intuitively to figure that out, which is not something I do, but it's another option.
That's great advice. Never thought of doing the last one that you suggested. Kristi, do you mind talking to us about the different types of designs, and I guess how common each of those designs are? And I don't know if you can just give a brief description as to what they're like in terms of their operation, so that people can have an idea of maybe where they sit, even without knowing right now what the actual design is. Yeah, so that's a big question, and we'll unpack it step by step. I know it was a big question.
The first thing I like to say is, we start with your energy type, which is a category. You're one of 5 energy types. This is, imagine like the car model that you're driving around. So you've got this journey that you're on, your life purpose, and you are a certain energy type, which is that car model. But remember, we're all uniquely imprinted. So when you look under the hood and see the different wiring and circuitry of the engine, or you look into the interior and see, the different ways that the interior looks, that then is the more specific layers underneath that type. But if we start with the 5 types, they are, and this is, I'm going to start with like the majority, 70% of the population are generators, or a subset called manifesting generators. I'm a generator as well. Yeah. And so that's the majority. And then you have 20% are called projectors. And I'll explain again what each of them are in a minute. And then you have 9% manifestors. And then you have a rare 1% that are reflectors. And I don't go into too much about reflectors because they are so rare. What I first want to start off with is the manifestor, which is 9% of the population. They are here to initiate and just can make things happen, almost like magically. They have, let's say, a business idea, or they want to create something, and they can really just have this energy to just start to take the steps moving forward. Now, we're all taught to do that, but the manifestors literally have sort of an energy formula to be able for that to easily happen, we can all try to do that, but we may end up getting overwhelmed or overworked and burned out. The generator type are really here to take sort of what's initiated and start to follow through and respond to it. Generators are here to be the worker bees. We're the ones to take care of the details, to make sure tasks are done and we're productive. And that is because we have sustainable life force energy to do that. So if a manifestor initiates, a generator would be great to respond or follow through. And that includes manifesting generators. And then you have the projector types, which is 20%. And they're the ones who are here to guide and help us kind of look at things holistically. They provide a lot of insight and wisdom. And so they might be the ones who are helping manage what the manifestor and the generator are doing, or projects, or to look at things from more, again, a holistic viewpoint. And then you have reflectors who are 1%, and they're the ones who can reflect back on sort of the success and, or, what's happening with the environment. So the way I describe it is like, if you were going, if everyone were jumping into a car, going on a car ride, the manifestor would be the one like, okay, we're going to take a ride today. We're going to head out on the road for a few hours. And the generator would be like, well, I want to make sure that there's enough gas in the car. Do we have our maps? Do we have snacks for the ride? What's the temperature? And then you've got the projectors who will say, wait a second, do we know which direction we're going? Are we taking the scenic route? Are we getting on the highway? And then the reflectors are the ones who are just making sure that everyone's, healthy enough and happy to go on this trip.
That's a pretty awesome car ride.
And if everyone's in their right role, they'll feel really good. If they're kind of trying to cross each other's, energy, or act like the energy being that they're not, then there's sometimes a little bit misalignment.
Yeah. I want to talk about, I want to ask you about the misalignment piece, because actually, I want to hear from you first. After you found out that you're a generator and found out about human design, what is like something that is very significant for you, that like what part of your life changed significantly for the better after discovering human design and following your design?
And this is a good place to kind of point out that, again, the majority of us are a generator or manifesting generator type. What's really key for us is that we find the right kind of work that we love, and that we realize that we have this like inner magnet to attract the right opportunities when we're doing the right kind of work. So what I started to realize maybe about 10 years ago or so, I was in a career that I had been for a while, and I started to do things on the side that were like teaching yoga, a wellness business. And I really enjoyed that as a passion. And I said, you know what, one day I think I'm going to be doing something more full time in this. But I kept doing my marketing work. And that was great, but something in me just started to shift. And again, in 2020, I left that career and started to recognize this shift into my passion of that health and wellness and self-growth. And so by responding to the right opportunities, by knowing I was attracting sort of the right things for me, I started to trust and make the decisions that were right for me at the right time. And it's like one step started to lead to another, And that's why I say I kind of stopped overworking. I stopped trying to make things happen. And when I started to trust and follow the generator energy, I really started to feel like I was flowing more in kind of the path that I was meant to be on.
That's really cool. Which kind of leads me to the question I was going to ask you. When people don't follow their designs, and I know for me, I mean, we're both generators, but as most people are generators, most people don't follow what lights them up. And for generators, it's really important to do things that lights them up, that doesn't take away their energy. And so how can people start recognizing how to follow these designs? Because people that have no idea about human design, that is not even in their mind to go, I need to follow what lights me up. And like what you were doing, you just kind of keep going. You just get on with it. And even though inside of you, you're like, oh, there's something, I feel like it's not right. What advice do you have for people to kind of really start kind of looking into what their design is and living their design?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for all types, no matter which you are, I think it's really important that you tune into this like inner wisdom that we have for a couple of reasons. One, we are so conditioned to use our mind to figure things out, to make decisions, to sort of map out our goals. I mean, we're at the beginning of the year and it's like all about goal setting and your vision. And that's really all head-based. And, the head has a purpose for holding information, receiving insights, but it's really our body wisdom and the inner intuition that we have that we have to start to learn to rely on more if we really want to find that flow. So one way I really think that it's important to get into the body is by doing self-care. And I think self-care, no matter what type you are, is so important. And it's more important as we hear a lot of that these days, self-care for our wellness, but it's also for energy alignment. So if we're doing the right kind of self-care to serve ourselves, and it looks different for everybody. So it's the kind of self-care, though, that is not only nurturing you, and it might be, again, a mind, body, spirit connection. It might be not only eating well and sleeping well and exercising, but it's also inner work. What are you doing to serve that inner wisdom? What are you doing to connect to your higher power or nature, even if that's what you believe? What are you doing to clear old traumas or self-limiting beliefs? Because that's also some of the work that we have to do, which can affect the mind, right? Our beliefs, what we were taught, how we were conditioned, how we were programmed, and things that may not serve us. So when we're doing some more of that inner work, I believe that it starts to align your energy. And even if you don't know what human design is or your type, it starts to bring you more into that authentic self that you are. We start to learn more about ourselves. We start to understand who are we not. And so I think self-care is a great way to start to, again, live your design, even if you don't know human design.
I love that. And I think self-care takes care of a lot of the things that doesn't work for us, because as a society, we haven't really been taught about what self-care is. Or we just get taught to keep hustling, keep pushing, keep going. Doesn't matter if you're about to die, you just keep going. That's just how we've been taught, work your 16-hour days, you want to be successful. So I think self-care really is such a great point to start off at, and then kind of build out to the more inner knowing and inner wisdom, and then following your designs and things like that. Yeah.
And I heard this phrase through my study, which is great, called functional burnout. So there's a burnout that we see with people where they start to have illness or health issues from overworking or being out of alignment or not dealing with, old traumas that then create the dis-ease of disease. But when we have, again, self-care to help us heal some of that, that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. Do you mind just chatting a little bit about your kind of self-care, self-love journey? Because I know you were in the marketing space and then you've left your corporate. Was there a point in your life where you were burnt out and you needed that self-care, and that's kind of why you kind of dived into this space?
Yeah. So, and let me also finish saying that functional burnout too doesn't mean that you're having health issues, laying in bed, unable to, function. Functional burnout is when you're actually doing the day-to-day work and you're just feeling drained and burned out, or frustrated or overwhelmed, but you're still doing what you need to be doing, right, for the day.
Yeah, I definitely had that.
Yeah, I had a couple of interesting years before COVID came. And one was a situation where my father, who had Alzheimer's, was getting towards the end of his life, and the disease was increasing in a way. And I was a caregiver with my mom, and just knowing that there was such stress, whether it was making decisions for him or helping my mom out, and seeing her really drained and burned out, that woke up in me this awareness that I needed to be taking care of myself. If I wanted to be there for both of them, then I needed to be doing my self-care. And then I would be able to show up. I consider self-care like that oxygen mask. If you're not putting it on yourself first, you're not able to really help others effectively.
Yeah.
And then I had a few other things happen in my life, in my marriage, and then the career I mentioned, where I just knew I had to do some energy clearing. I needed to sort of shift things in my life. And that came, I believe, now from me doing the inner work. Things like emotional freedom technique tapping, doing things like ancestral clearing. I even did something called family constellation work to kind of uncover what were these things that kept showing up in my life. What was it here to show me? What was the lesson? And what did I need to clear and shift? So that was key for me too. And so for me, that self-care looked like when I just mentioned some of those modalities. I always had an interest in kind of exploring different holistic modalities, Reiki, essential oils, again, yoga. So I think it's just important for each person to find out like what for them is self-care, and self-care is, I think, personalized. It's really, again, what do you need at this time to nurture yourself?
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story with us. And yeah, I really do. I mean, my biggest thing was self-love, self-care, because I wasn't looking after myself. So that's why I always love to ask my guests that question, because we always forget to take care of ourselves. Like you said, put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you can help others. Even though we think, oh, we need to help everyone and put ourselves last, it actually doesn't quite work that way.
Yeah. And I'd say self-care has a ripple effect, just like energy. When you're doing that self-care, that truly serves you. And it doesn't have to be big. It could be sitting to take a few breaths, pausing to close your eyes and do a mini meditation, going outside for a walk, or just having gratitude for something. When you're doing that throughout the day in even little bits and pieces, I feel like then that becomes, again, your oxygen mask, but also it has a ripple effect. You show up differently. Your energy shifts when you walk into a room. The energy shifts for others around you. Yeah,
I definitely agree, because people will say, a lot of people don't believe in like energy, but you can feel it. If you walk into a room and everyone's like angry and tense, you're just like, okay, let's back out of here. Or, when you go into a space where it's very loving and joyful, you can just feel it. So yeah, definitely that ripple effect is very long lasting, and you can feel it. Yeah. I want to jump back into human design. I just was interested in your self-care journey. Do you mind doing a little reading?
Absolutely.
Because I know you have my chart, so I want, if you don't mind, doing a little reading.
I'd love to. Yeah, I think this is a great way for your listeners to kind of get a little taste of how you look at a chart, and what they would get when they talk to somebody about human design. And you're a great example, because as I tell you things, you can kind of give me some feedback. So I know you're familiar already with some of the layers, but we start with you're a generator. So like me, you're here to do the right kind of work. As soon as you wake up, you're busy responding to opportunities, even if you don't notice. And one of the things that's key in your chart is something called the emotional center. So 50% of the population have this, whether you're a generator or not. And this means that you have an emotional wave of highs and lows. It's kind of a consistent wave, a pattern that you can track if you wanted to. And what's important is that when you do have that emotional wave in your design, you have this. You're not meant to make decisions spontaneously. You really need to be riding that wave. And I say sleep on it, or take 24 hours or even a few hours to reach what's called emotional clarity. That means, like, if you were in an emotional high in your wave and you said yes, you might regret it later and say, why did I say yes? I really didn't. I thought I had the energy to do that. And so when you give yourself some time and deliberately make a decision instead of spontaneously, you'll reach that emotional clarity and it'll be the right decision for you. And again, it comes in the body, not in the mind, that emotional clarity. Does that make sense?
Yes. I didn't really know I was emotional before I had my human design, because but then when I found out I was, had the emotional center, I went back. I'm like, oh yeah, I get the emotional, even though I don't show it. And knowing to pause and make decisions from a place of non-emotion has been a game changer for me, because even, like, for example, I have shiny object syndrome. I had, still recovering, shiny object syndrome, buying courses and just, looking for things to learn and fix myself before. So very easily manipulated. If you jump on a sales call with me, I'll be like, oh yeah, I need it. Whereas now it's like, I need to feel it. I actually tell the people, I need to feel it in my body. I need to just have some time to think about it. And then I can make a decision from clarity. And it's worked so well. And I actually very recently did this. Someone messaged me on Facebook anyway. And I was like, oh, this all sounds pretty good. I just want to find out. But then after a few hours, maybe 24 hours, I felt in my body, I'm like, nah, this isn't for me. It sounds great, but not for me. So I messaged that person back and they got angry at me. I went, yep, there you go. Not meant for me.
Yeah. And something that's really key is, I think that it's not necessarily you're coming from no emotion. It's that you're in a more neutral place.
Yeah.
And because emotion for you in particular is usually there in some part of the wave. But when you've gone through the low and the high, then you've kind of experienced sort of that feeling of like, does this work for me in both places? And then when you reach the neutral zone, it will be like this knowing of like, yes, this is what I want, or nope, this is not. Or if you're not getting any clear sign, then it's a maybe or not now.
Yeah.
So it's really this like sudden, like knowing that you have. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think I was trying to say neutral, but I forgot the word. So that's why I said emotional.
Yeah. And just because I think this is such an important center as we're evolving. The emotional solar plexus is getting so much more relevant. I mean, we hear people talk about empathicness. And if you don't have a defined center, I just want to say that means you're open and taking in the emotions that others with a defined are experiencing. So what's happening is, either way, the emotions are playing an important part for us to understand who we are, and the others people around us too. And as I said, for about 50% of the population, that emotional center is really important in decision making. For the others, or for a certain the generator types, at least the other decision making that generators can tap into is something called the sacral center, which you also have, which is like a yes, no kind of question you can ask yourself and answer from the gut. So you can also do that, but the emotional center is sort of the validator of that sacral. And sacral beings can answer more in the moment, and they don't need to wait 24 hours. Just always notice whether you're making decisions from the body or if it goes up into the head.
Yeah.
You've got an open head. Yeah. So if I can go there for a minute, like most of us have open heads. And that just means that we're taking in all the time information, ideas, beliefs, and we don't have to always be decisive or have to believe one thing. We can be flexible. We can understand things in many ways. So there's like this beautiful shadow and light aspect of each of the centers. And for the head, it's a pressure center. So we're going to think we need to answer questions and act on ideas and know beliefs and know decisions. But again, it's for most of us open, and that's okay. You also have an open throat.
Yeah.
So for open throats, I always say podcasts are great because you're invited to speak and you have a platform to speak. When you have an open throat, it can feel like sometimes like if you walk into a room and say something, you won't feel like you're heard. Mm-hmm. It's almost like the vibration of the words don't like resonate unless somebody invites you to speak. So podcasting is a great place for you to do that.
Yeah. And I love podcasting. So yeah, when you told me that before, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense.
And one other thing I'll say, which is really interesting about your design and mine, is that we match in our profiles. So a profile is sort of the way that you show up in life, sort of this character. And we usually have two ways. What's called a profile is made up of two different lines out of 6, and you're what's called the opportunist role model for 6, and as am I. And oftentimes I say we attract each other. So you've got a lot of great connections, and you probably have a very strong network of either friends or, business contacts, and you're seen as a resource. People will come to you, or you will say, hey, I know that person, or someone that can help you, or a tool that you could use. So you're great at connecting people. Yeah. And then you're also a role model, which means you have 3 phases in life. And that third phase is when you get to at about age 50, being the role model for others based on the experiences that you've been through.
That's pretty cool. Got another 10 years to go.
There you go.
But definitely the opportunities, like in terms of networking, that's very true, because especially now with what I do, podcasting and coaching and things like that, when people come to me, even if they're wanting to become my client, I can't help everyone. So I'm like, actually, I know this person, and I will refer people on, because there's always enough business and enough, there's always people that work better for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. There's always enough to go around.
Yeah.
So any other questions? Sometimes in a reading, I'll say, do you have anything going on you want me to take a look at through the lens of human design? And I know you know your chart pretty well, but that's an aspect we could talk about if you want anything. That's the kind of question that you have, or wondering something about your chart.
Oh, do you mind talking about the arrows?
The arrows. Oh, that's a rabbit hole. Yeah, I don't usually get into that.
Oh, really?
Such a good place to go, maybe for part 2. But we have so many layers in the human design chart. Arrows are helpful for like just telling you how your thought process is, and your environment, like what environments are great for you. And I call that sort of like 2.0 version, right? So we start always with the type. We go into the profile, and then when we start looking at things like the arrows or the gates or the channels, it starts to show a lot of more specific ways for you to be. And for like your listeners out there, just start with the strategy and the decision making. Those 2 places alone can make so much difference, and takes a while to really embody and to understand.
Yeah, totally agree, because I'm still learning to live my design as well. And I think it's kind of trying it on to see how it serves you rather than going, oh, that's my design and that's kind of the be all end all. Like, I think, I don't know what your thoughts are, but mine is always like, try it on, see how it feels, and then work from there, rather than like, even if you do a course and they teach you something and you're like, oh, I need to follow everything, even though it might not feel right. So like human design, try it on, see how you feel, and then keep going as you feel more comfortable with it. Is that what you think?
That's a great point, because I think I also have an open head. So I think naturally we want to learn more. Yeah. We think, let me also find this out and understand this. And we want to like get all the layers. But when we start with like just more simple steps and embody that, rather than think that our mind has to master it, but really it's more called the experiment. Being able to, on a daily basis, check in with that inner wisdom, check in with, am I responding? Am I living the strategy of my type? And we have to kind of slow down to do that and be more mindful and more intentional. Yeah. And so that's a great point, is just trying it on, noticing how it shows up for you. And there's no perfect way. I mean, this isn't anything you have to fix in your life. It's just an understanding and awareness of your design. And then you can make choices as you move forward, based on that, rather than trying to think you have to change something.
Yeah. Perfect. I love that. Thank you so much. I'm just mindful of the time, Kristi. So, So I want to ask you, before we wrap up, what is currently setting your soul on fire?
Besides human design.
Well, it could be human design.
Yeah. I think that's definitely part of it. I think just, what I'm amazed at is how things have shifted. And I know everyone's had various experiences in the last few years. I have found like this amazing community online of people who are on a spiritual path. And I think that is so important right now for where we're going and how we're evolving. I think more people, like you said, need to be that awakened feminine, or to have that as part of their balance of energy. And I think that's something that just really lights me up, is to know that there's people like you and I who can come together, halfway across the world, to connect and to share like our stories and find commonalities, and to yet also honor that we're really unique. Yeah. So that just piece of what we weren't talking about 10 years ago, what I didn't know 20 years ago, it's just amazing. I just really enjoy and appreciate it.
Yeah, same. Oh, that's so beautiful, Kristi. And yeah, same. It's just so beautiful to be able to connect with, like-minded souls, people that have the story to share, because the more we share stories and share, what we've gone through and our expertise and our, everything, the more we can be more compassionate and see things from a different point of view and spread more love and kindness and joy into the world. So that's really awesome. Yeah. Got all the feels going on. So, Kristi, thank you so much for sharing your love and wisdom with us today. I absolutely loved our conversation. I could talk to you all day. I said that before our podcast, so we can go on for hours, but we don't have enough time. So thank you so much. If people want to find out more about you or how they can work with you, where should they go?
I have a website that they can start with. It's KristiHSullivan.com. I know that'll be in your show notes. There you can find a link to my book, Stop Overworking and Start Overflowing, which is also on Amazon. I have a digital course, so you can do a self-guided sort of self-study. It's a short mini course about human design and creating a customized self-care plan. And then I also have a community on Facebook called Kristi's Human Design and Self-Care Community. I'm on Instagram as well. You can find me there. So I know that'll be in the show notes, and I look forward to hearing people, hearing what they thought about this, and love to see the feedback.
Yes, I will have all of your details in the show notes so people can find you and, work with you. And It's just such a great conversation. Thank you once again for coming on, Kristi.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.